Dude, you are getting well. Dude.
Love
Hey,
it.
Savio.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm so happy. I'm really well, I've been through a lot of spaces today actually. Truthfully, I just finished going like allowing some grief to come out.
Oh, well.
And on top of that came some joy because I got cleared of what was stopping me today, and I got really excited about what is ahead of me in my day. And one of those conversations is with you.
Okay.
And so I just want to say I'm so happy to have you here today. And for everyone who's listening live, past, present, or future, really want to thank you for being here. You are why we do this. And if anything has resonated with you today, please let us know. Please send me a message um, and ask us anything too. If you're listening, also please subscribe so that you can stay on top of all the great, beautiful medicine and inspiration that I will be giving away weekly. So Savio, I'm going to introduce you quickly. He is a beautiful human who I think I came across through the gift of the algorithms, because I really seek positive content and content that gives really clear tools for how we can move forward with our life and deal with life and not just be survivors but thrive. And Savio, you came across my world, and we did a great interview in Divine Masculine Mondays, the live series I used to do. So I was really happy to bring you back. And one thing I wanted to say is that you have always stood for the three brains. Not only is Savio a cancer survivor, a coach, author, speaker, podcaster, well, not only all those things, he's also a cancer survivor. And he's not just a survivor, he's a thriver. And you talked to me about the three brains a long time ago. The head, right? This one, the heart, and the gut. And since then, everyone's like talking about somatics, body stuff, and oh my gosh, it turns out it's in your body. And so it's really been coming up. So I was excited, and I want to have you back to talk about who you are and how you discovered some of this work.
Okay. Well, Ben, thank you so much for having me again on a different format. I really appreciate it. And I'm here really to just serve and to just bring a dose of inspiration as possible.
Oh, thank you. Well, one of the
Yeah.
first things I love to ask all my guests is what had you say yes to being here today?
What had me saying yes is I'm trying to actually push against my own barriers. One of my hurdles in life is really being seen. And I'm great behind the scenes, but I'm not so good front facing. And I'm trying to get better at that. So I'm trying to practice what I preach in my own coaching business.
Mm, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I really believe it's by sharing our truth we really can grow. And so that you're just like, yeah, this is something I deal with, and here's how I'm practicing dealing with it. Just showing up.
Yes,
And
100%.
sometimes I like that can be enough. I really want to be like, shout out to just showing up. I mean, that can be huge, right? Just being here
Yeah,
can be
100%.
the gift that
Yeah.
you give yourself today.
Yeah. And
So,
it doesn't, I always tell people it doesn't have to be huge, giant leaps. It could be. It could just be a little step further in the
yeah,
right directions.
yeah. It could be just showing up for that appointment that you made when everything in you wants to do something different, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So Savio, tell me, I'm really excited also. I didn't realize how close we live to each other, but I'm actually in Rhinebeck. You're in Westchester.
I am.
Yeah, so
I'm in
we've moved
Westchester.
closer together since I last saw you.
Yes, we have. We have. I actually haven't visited Rhinebeck in a while, so I need to
Well, you
go
can come
pop a
up
visit.
anytime.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the
Yeah,
help.
yeah, I would
It's a
love to
beautiful
meet you
city.
in person too. Maybe we can continue this over a lunch sometime.
Yeah, my sister lives in Poughkeepsie, so
Oh,
it's
wow.
it's
Oh,
not far.
cool.
Yeah, it's not far from Rhinebeck, so
Yeah.
I could make
So
two
tell
pit stops.
me, yeah, absolutely. And I want to put this out there to all of you listening because there's so many people I work with that I don't ever see in person. And even the guy who I did, John Tran, the Divine Masculine Mondays with for 16 months, we've still never met in person. But I really am making a conscious effort in my life to connect with people, especially men, face to face more, because that's kind of scary to me now, post pandemic,
Yeah,
is getting back in front of people. So that's one of the things I'm working on. and having this podcast is a great opportunity for me to practice showing up for people too, and for
100%.
myself. So thank you for helping me be a part of that. And for anyone who's listening, like I hope, this gives you permission to show up and just be present for what you care about in your life. So Savio, where are you from originally? Where were you
So
born and raised?
yeah, I was born in Mumbai, India, but my parents are from Goa, India, which many people don't know unless you've traveled to India before. Goa was ruled by the Portuguese for about 400 years. Then in the late 60s, there was a war between Portugal and India. India seized control. So when people look at me, see my name, they always assume I'm either Hispanic, I've got Northern Italian, I've gotten various permutations of my name. But I was born in Mumbai, India. I came to the country when I was 3 years old. So
Hmm.
pretty much American,
Yeah.
Asian Indian American.
Yeah, and people love to put us in boxes, right? So like, oh, where are you from? Oh, I know your name, or you look like this. And in New
Yeah,
York too, I'm sure they're like, oh, bro, you are you Hispanic?
I
You
mean,
Puerto Rican, aren't you? Tell me you're Puerto Rican.
I've had so many interviews, and they're like, a couple of them are like, I had no idea you're Indian. And I'm like, yeah, I know now. I'm just I'll
Yeah.
tell you up front. So,
Well, Go is
and then
one of my favorite places I've never been to. I've
oh,
actually met quite a few people from
it's amazing.
Goa. I've heard really it's fascinating. I mean, India to me in general is
Mm,
that, I mean, that's how vast it is, that there's a part of it that was, also Spanish speaking
yeah,
at some point, right? Or
yeah,
that, yeah, it's really wild.
yeah. And then from that, I was raised in Westchester County, a different town than where I live now. And then I went to school in the city, and then I lived in the city for many years, and then I
New
moved
York
back to a
City,
different, yeah, New
for
York
those of
City.
you not from New York. We
Yes,
just call it
sorry.
the city around
Yes,
here.
it's true. You're right. I keep forgetting.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So, what was your childhood like growing up in Westchester County as like a child of immigrants? I mean, I guess you were technically, right?
I was.
Um, so are you an American citizen?
I am an American citizen. I did that when I was really young, like 14 or 13 or
Yeah, I
whatever
guess you live
whatever
here
age.
long enough. Because I'm
Yeah.
really curious with how people deal with that, right? Like
Mm.
I mean, we're founded on immigrants, and we're founded before that, right, of the native people and the Lenape, especially in this area in Cherokee. I really want to honor the people who were here before us. But I also want to talk about like what it's like for you coming here as a kid, and I mean, just dealing with that initially, being from anywhere and coming into a school. I've been that kid. I played an all black baseball league, and they're like, why, as a kid, and they're like, why are you here? You know? So I can just imagine that on both sides. But what was your childhood like?
Yeah, so I grew up. So if you are a fan of '90s television, a show called The Facts of Life, it took place in a little town called Peekskill, which is the town that I grew up in,
Oh,
actually.
wow.
So I went to elementary school in Peekskill for 8 years. I was an altar boy because I went to a Catholic elementary school. And then I went to Peekskill High School, literally. It was a great experience. I didn't really have anything negative per se. I was the type of individual who was friends with, the nerds or just the popular people. I just kind of was floating, just trying to find myself. But it was an interesting dynamic because it was about 49% black, 49% white, and then 2% other. And me, my family, and the other going population. There was about 20 other families there. We were the others. And so I would say it was pretty. Um, I was very sheltered. My parents are immigrants, so they just made sure I got good grades. And if I did extracurricular activities, I remember begging my parents to have sleepovers with friends, and they would allow me finally after asking them to do that. But I was a very sensitive, curious child. I was one, so I have two older sisters. I was the youngest of
Oh,
three.
wow.
And then I was born in an Asian Indian household, which revered boys and sons, which thankfully is changing now. So I was really, to a large degree, very pampered. I'm not going to
Mm,
lie. So yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that and your truth. I mean, I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, so I hadn't even heard of Peekskill until like 5 years ago. But I shot a movie there. I don't know if we talked about that.
No,
I was
no.
my first feature film, or I guess it was my second one, called We Are the Hartmans, and we did a
Oh,
whole huge scene through downtown Peekskill, and now
oh,
it's one of my favorite places. and I didn't know about it before then. And I've been there. Peak Skill has an incredible organization also helping to stop the pipeline
Yeah.
activity. And so I've been there for fundraisers and
Ah,
protests, and
well,
so big shout out to Peak Skill
yes, big shout out
and
to Big
creating
Skill.
such a helping harness such a beautiful band like yourself.
No, thank you.
And you mentioned also something that caught my attention because I had an older sister, but she was a super brain in grade A, and you had some older sisters, but you said, being in an Asian American household, the boy was revered. So what has that had any impact on how's that affected your idea of like of masculinity or being a man or dealing with women, and how has that affected your sisters too?
Yeah, so I think it helped that I did grew up mainly with females, like my mom, two sisters. I would say my dad, to a large degree, wasn't extremely overtly masculine, although he would
Mhm.
do and say things that, in retrospect, wasn't really the most balanced. But I also knew I was different. I didn't know until I went to college that I came out as a gay man, and so that was. Pretty challenging in the sense of trying to find my identity. My dad would
Mhm.
sparingly throw words like, "This is what a man does." He would want me to tinker with cars and mow the lawn and um,
Mhm.
just do very typical a masculine type of things, which I
Mhm.
didn't mind doing in the beginning, but then it just became a drudgery at the end, and so I had to find my myself in that um, in that uh, in that arena of trying to
Yeah.
figure out what works for me, what doesn't. But the big revelation, like most, is when I went to college and I was on my own, and when I got to see other people express their own identities, and that to me was just really invigorating and also liberating.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I just want to say because my sister came out when she was in college, and then my dad came out, and I was just like, oh, I'm next. I'm gonna be gay, and I found this like feminist book of naked women in my mom's room. So I'm like, oh, well, she's a lesbian now. So like, we're just the gay family. And I had all these older gay men
Uh,
be like, oh, honey, I thought I was straight when I was your age too.
uh,
And it's really confusing. We I just want to say, like, I hope that we can create a world, and one of this why I have these conversations where you don't have to be different because you are attracted to um, the same sex or anything other than the quote unquote norm. That the norm could be whatever we say, and that we could create a new norm of being fully self-expressed. And that why do we have to wait till college to explore and to have permission to be ourselves? And where are we not creating that space for children now? Because we're so open and available and free. And I believe we're really born with that light. And then suddenly there's all these things on the outside that's like, no, 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 you got to fit in here and go through this hole and this hole. And you're like, oh, okay. In order to be a good boy and survive, I'll go through that. I'll do all of that. Right. And then suddenly, like 20 years, 18 years later, you're like finally dealing with yourself, right?
yeah,
Because you're not around your parents.
yeah.
What do you think can make a difference for what would have made a difference for you as a youth? Like, is there a way you could have like if you were to parent yourself now,
Mm.
how would you what opportunities or what ways might you create some new opening or space for little Savio so that he could have like really explored himself more at a younger age?
Mm. So a couple of things come to mind. So one of them is actually what I've been doing for the last 20 years, which is I don't assume anyone's sexual identity or sexual expression. I'm actually confirming. So even if I am at a gay bar and people are around, I don't automatically assume, because I think that then allows me to feel like I'm putting them in a box, right? And then I'm categorizing them. And so I just make it a point. It's been a practice, so it's not something I just do willy nilly. It's something I'm really conscious about. But I think back then, I think what would have helped me. So I was the typical, if you ever read the book Best Little Boy in the World, uh, Andrew Tobias, I was that boy. I got good grades. I made sure I was friends with everyone. I was just diligent. I was kind. I was sensitive. I just tried to do the right things. I was an altar boy. I think what would have really helped me
I
was
was also an altar boy, by the way, in the Episcopal Church, so
okay.
it's similar.
So
But
I
you
think what
said
have
what of, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think what would have helped me was just maybe just representation. I didn't really when I came out in college, like I I think there was this one guy in high school that people always thought was like different. I didn't really know what that actually meant. I mean, it sounds really strange to me now, but I didn't really have any bearings of what that even meant. I mean, yeah, I was 40 miles north of New York City, but I didn't really go by myself. I didn't really explore avenues of otherness, right? It was just a very narrow path. So I think that would have helped. And then maybe some role models of some kind. I didn't see any representation on TV. I
Mm.
think back then RuPaul was doing stuff, but she was considered like other, and she never really mentioned that. I mean, sorry, he never mentioned that he was gay. Um, so
Yeah, and he was
um,
mostly a drag queen. He wasn't just like a man speaking out yet, really. He was
exactly.
still and mostly in drag and publicly.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing was just the narrowness of the male identity or the male expression. I just found it to be just very black and white. I didn't really find gradations of it until now in my life, and thankfully, there's an uprise of men trying to be more feeling or more empathetic or just more open-minded. Back then, it was just very very narrow.
Yeah, yeah. And we've got a pretty large female listener following here too, which I'm just so grateful for the women who really show up because men are still figuring out how to do that. And I hope this like really does go beyond gender soon, but we're still dealing with these things. So I like to ask these questions. And in what ways have your sisters paved way for you to have more of a fluid did your sisters did they do you feel like they helped or impaired your identity with the masculine and who you
Um,
are today?
so I think when I was young, they did not help at all. They didn't make fun of me, but they always would, like, if I didn't do stuff that my dad wanted to do, just tinker with the cars and all this other stuff, they would just be like, "Why don't you do that?" Um, they weren't mean, and back then, even if there was never any use of the word gay or homosexual or anything like that, so that wasn't really happening. Although in the Goan culture there is a word that they use which is called baizwan, which is like a man trying to be a female, which
Mm,
wasn't really the most positive word affirmation. So I kind of knew what that word meant. Um, and I was trying to, I think, to some degree, trying to distance myself from that word. Um, now, though, in the present, my older sister who lives in Poughkeepsie, she's open minded about it. There is no negativity. I think she does know a couple of individuals who are gay. My sister in California, surprisingly, she lives in San Francisco or in the San Francisco area.
yeah.
Um, let's just say we don't agree on various things politically and um, yeah, actually a lot of things. And I wouldn't say she's the most open minded when it comes to that aspect.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you for answering so honestly. And I'm curious, even beyond sexuality, like if they, I mean, for me, having my older sister really, she was very progressive. So she
Mm,
really schooled me about like feminism and
wow.
what's not okay. But I didn't learn anything. I mean, I learned more about women than men actually growing up. Like my dad tried to teach me, I guess he mirrored a lot of things, but he taught me to be sensitive and own my feelings. And then he came out and when I was 10, so I was still, that's when I was finding my sexuality. I was still confused and trying to identify with the masculine because he had all these women attracted to him. He's very charismatic and like women loved him and he loved them, but it became clear, oh, because he was fluid and sensitive, and so if I'm that way, like I'm less of a man, and so I literally stopped identifying with. I was afraid of more hetero presenting alpha men, right? Turned out now we just call that like toxic or wounded masculine. It was this I this idea of what a man is that terrified me because I didn't identify with it. and yet I was in a man's body. So did you ever struggle with that?
I would probably say that they were probably confused a little bit that I did sometimes play with dolls, that
Hmm.
I knew, like I was curious about where like feminine products were, and
Yeah, it's
um,
fascinating. It's good.
yeah, I mean,
I
I mean
remember
there,
thinking that.
yeah, and also just being interested in things of a emotional, intellectual level. Like I hate to say it, but back in the '90s, or that whole, I mean, that's like a pivotal sort of time frame, '90s, '80s.
Yeah.
Um, Men were just like, at least the men that I was surrounded with, were just doing the typical men stuff. And if you did anything beyond that, then that would mean that you're deviating from the social norms
Yeah.
of being a man, which is really
Yeah.
crazy if you think about it. But that's how things were back then.
Yeah. I mean, we had Richard Simmons, but he was leading workouts for women, and clearly, like, more one of them, or,
Yeah,
even he branded himself that way. And I was
yeah,
thinking of, yeah, we just didn't have many role models for
no.
that. And so, what do you think we could do to normalize? I don't know. How could we shift the narrative around what a man is today? Like, what are some of the ways you see that men or women could? Because your sisters were doing the best they could with the tools they had as well around their ideas of what a man should be and what they're taught, and so they're probably confused if their little brother isn't fitting in that, and they're trying to learn how to please a man, in that heteronormative environment. So. Um, what are some ways you think we could nurture like this more healthy identity that men can be emotional and sensitive and or play with dolls or talk about their feelings or not know how to work on cars? What do you think is some access to that?
Mm. So I would say social media. I know it can be a negative bent in a lot of ways, especially excessive use of it. But I'm always flabbergasted with some of the social media sites like TikTok and Instagram, where I'm seeing male parenting, and it's like so beautiful because I
Mm,
didn't have any of that. Like my parents, if you watch television, someone was kissing, they would change the channel. Like I got none of that. Like there was no hugging. I've heard this with other Asian Indian households. They rarely said "I love you," just not something that they'd said.
mm,
Um, I don't fault them for it. It's just who they were as people. So I think the display of it, the access to seeing that, like when I've seen like men parent, like it's just so beautiful. So I think that's one. I think two, being in some form of community, whether that's online community or whether that's a physical community, that goes beyond just a very focused, like, for example, like if you do cross training, right? Maybe there could be like a let's get a bite to eat afterwards, as opposed to just being a one dimensional type of experience. I think that would probably help. And
mm,
then this is a hard one, but just having a safe space, like having a confidant or relying on a best friend or a peer or someone who you can just be real with, like literally without the bros. And it's fine if that's the language that you use, but sometimes I find that often that's a mask for not trying to just be. We're human beings, and so we share the same. There's some variations with our genitals, but we share the same sort of feelings, emotional vibrations, mental, astral. Like there's all these things that we have a commonality with, and so I think we need to get a little more guttural with ourselves, a little more open.
mm. I think that's so beautiful. Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful advice that we could really connect with each other, that we could say, I love you more,
Yeah.
that we could make space for each other, hold safe spaces for each other. Um, that's exactly why I created the Lion's Den, which is going to be, we're shifting to Dude School soon.
Okay. Okay.
Because I want to rebrand, dude, that it's like this like dude thing, and it could literally be anything, and that like really healthy dudes could also be like beautiful and feminine and loving and nurturing and sensitive. And so thank you for mirroring and living by example for us for all of those spaces now.
Thank you.
So how did you go from growing up in that environment with that mentality
Mm.
to the way you're thinking now, like to really finding Savio? You said it sounded like college may have been a safe space for you to start to explore yourself. What was the access for you to get here?
So I can tell you a short story about so I went to Fordham University in Lincoln Center, right in the center of Manhattan. They have a Bronx branch, which I didn't go to. So it was like a 20-story building. Literally was living in an apartment in the city. And
Wow.
interestingly enough, I lived in my freshman year was a 6-person suite. So 3 rooms, 2 people in each room. And I just to this day, I'm shocked. Like myself and someone else were in the room, and the other 4 in the room were all outwardly, openly gay. And then it turned out that one of them, in fact, was gay, but just closeted. And then I came out a year later. So we were all gay in this 6-person suite. And I'm like, what did I put on my application? Because it's a random application. Like I didn't, and I'm like thinking now this is like my brain at that point thinking like, did I put like, yeah, I like Liza Minnelli, but did I put that on? No, I didn't put that on my application. Like, did I put any stereotypical words or phrases? I didn't. So I really took that as a sign that I needed to experience literally the complete antithesis of what I was experiencing then. I literally saw a gay man who came from San Francisco, went to college, and he was like lispy. I saw another one who wanted to dress up in drag, another one who had like Bette Midler CDs. And, like I saw like different variations of expression. And even though I professed that first year that I wasn't gay, but I was open-minded and I was a sensitive person, so I would never turn away anyone or anyone's experiences. Um, I think that really catapulted me into exploring self-identity and what that actually means. It wasn't easy, honestly, Ben. It was really tough. My freshman year was like really tough on me because I would have people be like, "Why are you hanging out with the gay guys?" And then I would have people like, "Well, your limp is like literally things like that." And it actually weighed on me psychologically,
Mm.
and my grades suffered the first year.
Thank you for sharing that. That really resonates with me. I had a very similar experience as I started weightlifting with this dude who became an Abercrombie model. He was
Wow.
like they call her Mister Abercrombie because he was such a like big dude. But I was an actor, and even in high school, I went to a Southern Christian high school, so I played sports. I did theater. I was president of the Magic Club, did
Uh,
cheerleading, but I was also on the soccer team. So they were like, "What are you doing? Like,
yeah.
why are you hanging out with those people?" And like from every single group to the point where I was like, why can't we just hang out with more than one kind of person? Like I didn't identify with any one group. So,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until I moved to New York and when I went to school in New York City at NYU where I was like, oh man, you could be like all the colors of the rainbow here. Wow, this is fun. Um, but we don't have yeah, I'm just wondering how we can create more access for permission for people um, for that now. So this is, I think we're getting there. So for you, you said it was really going to that school in New York,
Yeah.
and then
And
you
then
and people were like, "Why are you hanging out with those guys or those people?"
yeah, and then so and then one of the individuals was really into me, like really into me. And I'm like, I'm not gay. And then when I did come out, I just, it's not really, let's put it this way. I had a hard time in the area of love. I still kind of do. I'm trying to process all of that. I just think, I think it's a combination of who I am as a person. Could be a soul thing, spirit thing, who knows? I'm still trying to work through all that. But at the time, I did know I didn't want to go forward in doing anything with the person, but the person was like really into me. So I think that just put me on a path to exploring. Well, what does gay actually mean? Like, what does it actually mean? And so after I graduated college, I was like, I'm gonna live. And back then, they used the word gay ghetto. So I got an apartment in Chelsea on 19th Street. I was on 8th Avenue.
Wow.
Went to the Big Cup. Like I did all that. Like I went to sex clubs. Like I did. I wanted. I'm a curious person. I'm like a sponge, so I wanted to absorb everything. So I went to bars and what I finally came up with after years later was that I don't really think that I need to um, give my allegiance to one particular type of experience. I am gay, but that doesn't define wholly who I am. It does show me a greater lens of who I want to be and what I want to create in my life. Um, so I think experiencing all that just allowed me to feel a little more in touch with who I'm as a person, and then that's when my exploration to spirituality came into play. And then it's my own belief system, but I believe in things like reincarnation. I believe in things like the soul goes and learns and has new experiences. I believe in overcoming certain karmic debts and whatever the case may be. So that was a 20-year, I'm still on it, but 20-year type of exploration that I've done consciously.
Mm. It, that's so beautiful. And you believe it was because you finally had the space to explore yourself and really look and listen. And those things, you mentioned a lot of really powerful things that even I was intrigued by. I don't think I ever went to a well, I don't think I know I never went to a sex club in New York, but it was something I always wanted to check out and I never did, and that takes courage. And I hear you not, excuse me, I hear you not judging yourself around those. That you're actually looking for explorations and finding like what resonates with me, and even now, like as you identify, with your sexuality, but that's not all who you are. Right? What did you want to be when you grew up? When you were a little kid, and you're like, when I grew up, you remember?
Easy. I wanted to be an astronaut. Actually, I was always fascinated with space. I still am. And then the Challenger explosion happened. I think in 86, 85 or
Yeah,
86. And I was like, oh, I don't really think I want to do this. But
yeah, I remember that
I
too.
remember researching like 2020 vision and all that. And I think at the time, I could be wrong, you did not have to be. So I wasn't born in the US, but I think at the time, I don't think it was like the presidency where you had to be born in the US. At least that's what I know. But anyway, so I changed my mind, and then I knew that computers were just so easy for me. It just came like a natural infinity. So I had the first computer. I had like Nintendo. I had all these things, and so I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to do something with computers. And so that's kind of what I did in college. I had a double major in computer science and business administration. So
Wow. Did you did you have a Dell?
I did have a Dell. I did. I had a Dell, an HP laser printer. I had several printers, but an HP laser printer. I did. I had all those actually.
That's
I never
great.
had an Apple when I was growing up, though. I never had an Apple. I always knew I was a PC guy, and I
Yeah.
still am. I have a Surface Book now, but
I
I'm
think
a PC.
PCs were one of the first ones though, right?
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
I2G or something. What was it called?
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't
that was an
remember.
Apple. Anyway, yeah. It's a long time ago before
Yeah,
the internet, so
yeah.
some of these people listening may not even identify. But there may be a lot who do and remember that
Yeah.
just well along with us. So right, so you said you're great with computers. Oh yeah, because I was thinking Michael Dell like probably he started building his computer like
Oh,
building computers himself
yeah.
at some time. So how did you go from IT to spirituality to coach, author, podcaster, coaching cancer survivors?
That's a long story, but I will try to
Can you
truncate
give
the
us like
story.
a
Yes, I will.
like the short version?
I will. I will. So I did computers, building websites, mobile apps, project management, all that stuff behind the scenes. I did it
Do you
for
still
a
do
long
that?
time. No, I don't do that. So
Okay. I'm
cancer
always looking
showed
for some good tech people.
cancer showed me a new avenue. And
Mm.
so what ended up happening is I got into spirituality. I was in a business with three other individuals in the area and the realm of spirituality for a good 20 years. It didn't end well. And so I was going through some turmoil at the time. About a year later, so this is in 2014, I was diagnosed with stage 3 non Hodgkin's lymphoma I didn't really have a choice in how the treatment was made because I was told to go see a doctor at a hospital, and then they admitted me to the fifth floor within an hour. I had to put in a nephrostomy tube.
Wow. Wait,
They had
hold
to.
on, hold on, hold on. I know you've said this a million times, but you went into the doctor, they told you what was going on, and they're like, and we're admitting you right now. You're going to the fifth floor, like, call your family, bring you a bag.
No, so sorry.
And you
So let
have
me
cancer,
let
like
me yeah
stage
let me
three.
yeah let me just give a little more context. So I was told. So I've been seeing a naturopath for many years prior to cancer. Every year I would. He lives in Farmingdale, Long Island. He's really skilled at what he does. He analyzes the blood, tells you what vitamins and food and all these things you need to do. I would see him once a year. I was very up on it. Great. He looked at my blood work. He's like, Savio, something is really wrong here. I can name like four things, but I really think you need to go to mainstream medicine. And at that time, I rarely went except for regular checkups. Um, and so he's like, get a sonogram. So I got a sonogram. They wouldn't let me leave the office for about an hour and a half. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? They came back out and they're like, sir, you really need to call one of your family members and drive, to the hospital. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I have my car here. They're like, no, you really need to call a family member. Call my dad. My dad came. We went to the hospital. Doctor checked me in and basically said to me, you need to go upstairs. We are admitting you into the hospital. I'm like, for what?
Mm.
And they're like, they wouldn't really tell me. It's put on the fifth floor. That night, I heard some whispers that they were going to transfer me to the seventh floor, which they call the cancer floor. So I had an inkling, I had an idea what was wrong. At the time, I was going through like a distended stomach. My stomach was just getting bigger and bigger. I had a little bit of belabored breathing as well. And so I had an oxygen mask put that night. And then about 24 hours later, they put a nephrostomy tube because they had to distend about 5 to 7 liters of fluid from my abdomen. And then the doctor whispered in my ear, it's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And and then I was visited by 13 other doctors, 14 other doctors, and actually I think it was 16 other doctors, and they all kept asking me questions. And they basically said to me, if you're going to have a cancer, this is the cancer to have, which is crazy, but that's what they said. They're like,
Thanks.
we have
Yeah.
something called Rituxan, which is amazing. It speeds up the chemotherapy process. I was bedridden for a week because they had to put the tube in me, and then the other week, 3 days before I left, so I was in the hospital for a total of 2 weeks. I was told I should start chemo with my medical director, which at that point I was open to, but I wasn't really sure. And I called a good friend of mine who was actually part of that business situation, and she's like, "You sure?" She lives a very holistic lifestyle. So, you sure you want to put those poisons into your body? I thought about it really deeply, and I don't know if you ever watched that movie with Keanu Reeves called oh my gosh, he played Siddhartha, Little Buddha.
Oh no. No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, so he played Siddhartha, which is pre-Buddha, and he basically gave up his life, gave his lifestyle, gave his family, everything he gave up, and he was meditating. He was meditating with three other ascetics, and while they were there, he was meditating. He basically was living on 1 grain of rice per day, and he heard two people in the boat, and one of them had an instrument, and he heard one of them say, "If you hold the line too loose, it won't play, and if you hold it too tight, it'll snap. The key is the middle path." And that's literally the thing that came to me, and I was like, okay. I'll do the chemo, but I'll do other integrated modalities, and that's kind of what I did. Yeah. So that, in a nutshell, is my cancer experience.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And what did that experience? Well, so you survived, obviously,
I did
and
survive.
you lived through it. And
I
I,
did.
I even like am hesitant to use the word survived
Yeah.
because it's like above living, surviving, right? On top of living. But we have this negative context with survival that we're in this, like, we're just all trying to survive right now, right? So, how did you actually go from being in that survival to actually thriving in your life to talking about it and helping other people? Like, what was, and first of all, you also overcame it in an extraordinarily short amount of time, right? Can you
I
talk
did.
through a little bit of that with us?
Sure. So I was diagnosed in July of 2014. I did 6 cycles of RCHOP, which is complex medical terminology. And then on opposite cycles, I did 7 or 8 different integrated modalities, which I researched, which I kind of had a feeling and knew about, but I wanted to I want to leave no stone unturned. And so I remember 5 days before Christmas, December 20th of 2014, my oncologist told me I was in remission. They will never use the word cured. They will use no evidence of disease, and that's what I was told. So I've been in remission for the past 7.5 years. This December will be officially 8 years. And I promised myself that if I hit the 5-year remission mark, I would do something with it. I didn't know what that was. And I used to remember seeing signs when I was, younger, life coaches. I remember like, these people's lives are horribly messy. Like, how are they a life coach? Like, what does that even mean? So I somehow, the business relationship ended with a few people. And so I decided that I needed to go a new way. And I don't think I processed the emotional aspect of that business situation. I'm not saying that was the main cause of the cancer, but I think it didn't help. It didn't help the cancer. And so I decided to be a coach. And so I'm a board certified wellness coach. I'm an ICF certified, which means nothing to the layman, but means a lot in the world, as you know, of coaching. And my niche is I assist cancer survivors in overcoming the confusion and gaining the clarity, because I think that's the thing that's missing, so that they could, be the best, versions of themselves and live the life they want to live. My genius lies in the fact that something horrible could happen to you, but that there's many varied options. And so hence, besides becoming a board certified wellness coach and helping the cancer survivor community, I'm also a author. My book dropped this past February. I'm a syndicated.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's the name of it so we can type it in?
Sure. I survived cancer, and here is how I did it. The story with that is I'm a syndicated columnist. I write for Authority Magazine, Thrive Global, and LinkedIn. I'm sorry, and BuzzFeed. And so it got about over 200 responses. My first interview series was I Survived Cancer, Here's How I Did It. And my editor's like, Savio, this has to be a book. And so I took 35 of those stories. I told my own. It dropped this past February. Within 24 hours, it became a bestseller, which means that, to me, means that it resonated, that there's the hopeful stories that I wanted was told, because my intention in the beginning was, if I ever saw that book on day one of my cancer journey, it probably would have put me on a different emotional path. I think I came through it, but it took me years to unravel the emotional and the feeling aspect of it. I do a lot of embodiment work. I'm also a podcaster. And so that's how it all started, Ben.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And you mentioned the embodiment work, and you're helping cancer survivors now as a coach, and you realize it was a multifaceted thing and you wanted to be used up by life. You know, uh, and I mentioned the three brains at the beginning. Tell us about the three brains, because it's one of my favorite things I talk about every day, and people are still baffled. Like, oh man, have you heard about this? I mean, we've been training our heads so much for so long, like the brain's up here. But what I'm hearing is you actually, I want to hear how you survived cancer, right, from your side, but what it was about about the other two brains that you used in that process, and how you
So
use that in your process with survivors now.
So like most people, I always lived in my head. My head is my greatest asset. It's also my greatest foe, because I can talk myself out of stuff. I can, be fearful. I can create all these negative scenarios. So living in the head has just been really easy. Living in the heart, uh, um, I'm a Pisces, sensitive, only boy, gay man. Like, that's not hard for me to be emotional, but I think there's a difference between that and expressing feelings. I don't think I was good at expressing feelings, because I didn't come through a nurturing situation where we were told to express feelings. We were just told, this is the situation, and that's it. Like kind of like deal with it. Not in a harsh way, but just there was nothing. There was no context to that. And then my discovery in all that is through my trainings with embodiment work and somatics, is really the gut. And the gut is the seat of courage. And looking back in 2014, when that stuff happened and that business endeavor failed, I didn't have the courage, Ben, to speak my truth. I didn't have the courage to tell them how I felt. I didn't have the courage to say that because I thought feelings like that were supposed to be like suppressed and repressed, not expressed, because then it comes across as negative and you're not in harmony. And I was like convincing myself these feelings were not good. And so for me, head, heart, and gut is a lot of the work that I do. Like in the interview series, which then became a book, I asked the question, if your cancer had a message for you, what would it say? And people were like floored. They're like, no one's ever even, I never even thought about asking my cancer, this thing that is trying to kill me, what it's
Mm,
trying to show me. And
mm.
so I think that's really powerful when you get to that.
Yes, yes, I love that. We love questions here. I love the power of questions. And where are we not asking an open? Like you're literally asking, you've been at talking to this part of your body a lot, but you actually haven't talked to your heart, you haven't talked to your gut. And I think there's so much magic in there. You said the gut is the seat of courage, and it can take courage even to start to listen to that in today's world. But there's so much knowledge, right? Our gut has its own nervous system, and so much of our mood can be affected by it.
And
But
the
that you,
key, yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
go for it.
And the key is that most people think that it's just they're siloed. They're not siloed. They can talk to one another. You can actually try to, if you get really touchy feely with yourself and really know yourself, you can actually go in and out, like back and forth, and seeing what kind of wisdom comes through. It doesn't have to just be what is my head saying. That's it. It could be what my head, heart, and sometimes they could be contrary to one another. But the key is to find that inner wisdom, right? What is your inner self? What is the highest potential trying to show you or tell you, and trying to leverage that.
Mm, mm, that's good. And what do you feel like mm, what did your cancer teach you? What do you feel like it's here to still, or what was it here to show you?
I think it was there to tell me. So I love Erica Badu. She's one of my favorite singers,
Oh, me
and
too.
she has a
Yes.
song where she talks about bag lady, this woman who carries bags, and
Mm,
I was carrying emotional baggage. I really was. I can be honest about that. I really was. I mean, if you looked at me back then, you probably thought like I was great, but I pretended to be great. But so I think that it's definitely showed me that I can express those, and I don't have to carry the bags, but also this idea of vulnerability and a little bit of shame. So of course I resonate a lot with Brene Brown's work because that's what she, that's who she is. That's what she, shows us. And I think a lot of it was relying on other people for help. I've been very good at like being doing things on my own, but after a 5 hour chemo bed session, you just do not have the energy to drive yourself home. You just don't.
I'm so glad you mentioned asking for help too. Getting into vulnerability, that it was there to show you that beautiful side of yourself. Because you clearly were smart and good at doing all of those things. You know, your parents showed you how to do, and then you had this opportunity to start to listen to your body. And what do you feel like your heart and gut have been teaching you?
I
What's the
think my
greatest lesson you learned from getting out of your head and into those brains?
I think it's okay to have flaws. Like I was someone, and someone actually told me this long, long, long time ago. You're someone who just would never let your pants like fall down and have people see it. Like you're just not that guy. And I'm like, you're 100% correct. I'm not that guy. I'm going to be the guy who presents well. That's just It's just who I am. But I think cancer taught me it can be ugly. Like that's okay. It's okay for you to feel ugly. It's okay. So I think
Mm,
that's number one. And I think in terms of the gut, I think it sort of allowed me to feel like I don't have to rely on just one way forward. I can harness other energies uh, to move forward in a healthier way as opposed to in a survival way, right? I think our brains, right, fight or flight. So I think my brain just kicked in. I saw it as a challenge and I was just going to fight through it. I was going to survive through it. But I think if I harnessed a lot of my gut and also my heart, I think I would have probably come through the experience with a lot more community. I didn't really rely on community at all. I I was still going to the gym. My eyebrows were falling out. Everything was a mess, and I was like, no, I'm gonna fight my way through it. But I think sometimes fighting is great and fine, but I did that a lot with my life. Like, just I had a stuttering impediment when I was young. I had social anxiety when I was young. I was in a culture, community where I was different and other. I was gay. Like, I had all these labels, and cancer was just yet another label. And so I think my gut would have just told me the courage for you is to embrace it all, because it makes and it creates a kaleidoscope of your experience, and people gravitate towards that. They don't have to gravitate towards the pretty always.
Mm, what an important message.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I moved to tears because it really had me get my experience this morning. Before I saw you, I try to take a walk with my wife, my partner, every morning in nature, and often when we move our bodies, surprisingly enough, not surprising, things move, and we really get, like, I get in touch with what's really going on sometimes, whether sitting in meditation or actually moving my feet and touching the ground. And as I was crying this morning, and I was saying, because I was reflecting my wife, that I didn't feel like I maybe made enough space for my father yesterday. My father passed, but like just for that. And then the next sentence was, well, that's actually probably not true, because here's what I did. I started naming all these things, and I told a story, I made this beautiful video, and then I was saying it was so confusing because I lost my father about a year ago, and then a year later I found out, my wife and I had been trying to get pregnant. We found out she was pregnant, and it was such a gift. And I was like, oh, this is the gift from the grief, right? This is the joy from the pain. And then 3 months later, she had a miscarriage. And I was like, what the F, creator? Like, come on. Like, I thought this was the gift. And so even this morning, what I'm getting from all of this is that I said, out of my mouth came, I think I'm getting that the grief is part of the gift, and that the gift isn't just joy, it's also sadness, and that some of the greatest parts of life are just full of color, and they're both joyful and tragic and happy and sad, and that it doesn't have to be one thing, and that this ugliness you speak of, or not having to always be pretty or feel great, or that can be part of the gift as well. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something I really got from being here with you today, that really landed for me.
I have a question for you. Your child, soon to be, hopefully, um, what is the greatest lesson you would want to teach them?
Mm, that's a great question, Savio. Mm, probably just what I said, that like the parts of you that feel, um, just to learn to love all of yourself and to give that to other people. Um, I think to love fully and vulnerably, and that your most vulnerable, scary parts are also some of your most beautiful, and to embrace those. I think that's what I would want to know. And that well, it's funny, I was about to say being a man, because we have so many. We kept naming our child with women's names, and
Oh, interesting.
we're like, wow, we don't even know. But if it had a uh, male genitalia, um, I would want it to know that it could still be whatever it wanted, despite what it looked like physically.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
And
beautiful.
what about you? If you had a child, what would you want to tell it? What would you want it to know?
It might sound really simple, but it's that you matter. I think for a long time growing up, I felt the difference separating me from the human experience. I really felt completely different from the human experience in general. Even like exploring gay culture and all that, even when I thought I found a community of some kind, now cancer community, I felt separate. So I think that you matter really speaks to me, because you're here for a reason, whether you know it or you don't. You're you have this human expression for a reason. So I think you matter just allows you to bolster that, and allows you to find significance for your life.
Mm, So wonderful. I love that message. You matter. If you could give that gift to the world, that everyone knew they mattered, what do you see us all doing if we had that gift today?
Um, I think it would be a lot more of embracing differences. I think, and I caught myself doing it too with this whole political maelstrom that for the last few years. Um, I have to take ownership of some of the divides that I created. Um, I think we need to really get to the heart of what do we want to create? What do we agree on? And I know the truth has been obfuscated, but what do we agree on? And what can we cultivate to live more harmoniously as people? I think once we get to those grassroots and figure those things out, things will be a little easier. We won't agree completely, that's fine. But I think there's just been too much difference rather than sameness.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, we're really focused on our separateness, and
Yeah,
that the world is pointing us that way. So thank you for this message, because rage today, like it or not, you can research this for listeners, is the most profitable emotion.
yeah,
So every news outsource in the world that can get you angry about something or pointing your finger at someone else is actually making money from that. And you see like these separatist organizations are starting and building and making money and like literally like doing what they're hoping,
yeah,
like building little armies to try to like defend themselves, when we could just literally come together and start to talk to each other and say what matters to you and what are you afraid of and how could we meet each other's needs. um, my mom has a sibling that they've struggled communicating over political disbeliefs, and I just think there is a lot of opportunity to come together. So thank you for saying that, and thank you for coming forward today and living by example and showing us what's possible for the world, no matter what genitalia you have or who you're attracted to, right? That you matter and we need you, and that there's so much knowledge, not just in our heads but in our hearts as well and in our guts, and
yeah,
that we can share this knowledge with each other, right? We also don't have to like compete over it, and that's why I like to talk to other coaches too. It's not like, oh, who are it's we can learn from each other and teach each other, because I don't think any of us have the answer, but I think we've got a lot of solution together.
100%. And to a large degree, I think once we all realize that we are connected, and that sounds a bit woo woo, but we are. That we'll just be more understanding of one another. I think understanding is what's lacking a little bit.
Mm, thank you. Well, for anyone listening, if this resonated, please subscribe, please follow, and please check out Savio's work. We have his book here, I Survived Cancer, Here's How I Did It by Savio Clemente is out there. I'm excited to check it out. And congratulations again.
Thank
And if people want to get hold of you, oh, and this is really resonating, by the way. We had a few people, including this beautiful woman, Becky,
you.
uh, just saying how much you radiate with light and love and how
Oh, thank you.
inspiring your story was for
Thanks,
her.
Beck. Thanks,
So,
Becky.
if we want to learn more about you, what's the best place to check you out?
Sure. So you can go to my main website, which is thehumanresolve.com. You can go to my book website, which has a book trailer and also reviews at isurvivedcancer.co. And then on social, I'm at the Human Resolve, on LinkedIn, Savio P. Clemente, and soon to be on TikTok. So I'm
All
excited.
right, fun. I
Yes.
just started on there too, so I'll look for you. Be sure we can
Okay.
follow each other.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I currently follow a whole slew of people who rarely
Oh,
didn't post
nice.
anything. So I'm going to post. I'm going to post.
Oh, it's okay, and it's okay if you don't too. I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
let
Yeah.
you
It's
know.
true. It's
Please,
true. It's
people,
true.
we don't have to be posting to be
Yeah. No, it's
accepted
true.
in life.
It's
You're
true. No,
enough,
you're right. You're right.
Savio. You're doing so good for the world.
It's true. It's true. It's
You
true. But I do.
matter.
I do have a competitive edge to me, so I'm not gonna lie about
Hey,
that.
that's great. I mean, that's something we could use, right? I'm
Yeah,
sure
absolutely.
that really helps you thrive.
It does. It does.
Well,
does.
I'm so grateful to spend this time with you. Thank you for spending it with me. And thank you for everyone who's listening for spending time with us. I really hope this has resonated. Please let us know. Please reach out, contact myself, Savio, The Human Resolve. Check out his book. And, you know, if you, in case you didn't hear it, you matter.
Thank you, Ben, and you matter as well. I really appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully, I'll be at the Omega Institute and visit you for
Oh,
a quick
yeah. Maybe
second.
we
That'd be
can
great.
lead something together there, Savio. We
Let's
don't have
do
to
it.
wait for someone else
Let's
to build
let's.
it.
That's fine with me. Let's do it. I'm
Okay.
okay with it.
All
Okay,
right.
sounds good.
All
All
right.
right,
We'll
I'll talk
follow
to you soon.
up. Well, have
Okay,
a
I'll talk to you
beautiful
soon.
day. Thank
Okay,
you, everyone.
thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.